I am an architect that works designing project. I mean, but I'm also a professor, and I end up doing the master and PhD, and so and the city of São Paulo was the topic of my research all the time, and all the time trying to understand how city acts in our way to study architecture. So the just to say, the stuffs that I'm going to show are not so strict, historically speaking. Is not so. It's much more to understand our way to think about architecture and how this city specifically act in this process. I'd like to show you this image to say this car is Paraguay. You know, the country of our very good friend Solano Benitez, an amazing architect from there. São Paulo is here, and there is a line here made by the mountains that divide America, South America, into pieces. This one that was colonized by the Portuguese, and this piece that was colonized by the Spanish. The exception is the south, extreme south, that Argentina, Uruguay, that also belong to in the colonization process to Argentina. What I would like to start is by saying that we had several roads or Indian trails actually linking different places. For instance, there is one that was very famous called Piabiru that bring the people from Paraguay that are an Indian called Guarani to the ocean here. And this trail, the people walk for 1,000 kilometers from Paraguay to the sea. And in this trail, there was a place called Anhangabaú. It's an Indian name that was, since that time, very well known for those that made this trail. It's a very very easy to be recognized this place since the beginning. So we are going to do zooming. Piabiru is the name of the trail. Anhangabaú is the name of this place. So the same section of South America, going close to São Paulo city, that is exactly in here. This is the port of São Paulo. There is a reason why the city is here. There is this distance is about 40 kilometers, but we are 800 meters above the sea level. And so a good reason is that São Paulo is a very easy way to get inside. The city where we have we call nowadays two metropolitan rivers. This is the Tietê, this is Pinheiros. Doesn't matter the names, no, but São Paulo is a 20 million people city. We are going closer. And here in downtown, we had another two different rivers that we called, that are our two historical ones. This is Tamanduateí, and this is Anhangabaú that comes here. Actually, São Paulo is made by several different rivers, dozens of them. And for instance, this very small river called Anhangabaú, but very, very important, is made by three others. That is one here, another here, and the third one there. So we can't see anything in the city nowadays, but the topography shows very clear the river that used to have. And this is the place that the Indians knows very well since more than 1,000 years ago. And it's amazing because we have no Indians anymore. All of them were completely destroyed in this very hard process that it is the colonization. We don't speak Indian language in Brazil in general. Of course, that there are a lot of tribes that are in Amazon is amazing as well. Tribes that had never been in touch with us. Uh, but we inherit a lot of their culture and a lot of words. To me, it's amazing that this place in the most central heart of São Paulo city, we still call the place with the name that they gave to this site, Anhangabaú. To me, it's a beautiful word and with a very strong meaning, exactly here or here. This is the place nowadays. The former river bed was here, the other here, a second one here, and the third one in here. And they run to that side to meet the second historical river here. So these rivers made this site our primordial settlement of São Paulo city. And I will describe a little bit better about this primordial settlement. But we were talking, and I told you that I had a very, to me, the first time that I arrived to São Paulo, it was very impressed because I went there by the first time to study architecture at the University of São Paulo. This building, that was the school that I went to study architecture. But I left my hometown and I went to São Paulo by the first time. I left a town as the 1,000 times smaller than São Paulo city. My town is 20,000 people, and I went to a 20 million people. So both the building and the city, I think that both of them played a very important role in the process of my education. This building, well, I can't, I don't have time to describe too much, but I could describe this building by saying two things that here could sound absurd, but it's not in Brazil. I mean, in Brazil, we can think about our building by having exactly the same air inside and outside. So this building is a doorless building. There is no way to close. And and all for instance, here is our library. It has exactly the same facade inside and outside. It's not so easy to say when you are inside or outside the building. For instance, now we had a new law in São Paulo that we have in the whole world that's completely forbidden to smoke inside the building. But here it's very hard to say where we can, where we cannot. No, so this is my architecture school that was designed by Vila Nova Artigas, one of the most important architects in São Paulo. Maybe if I would say the biggest names of our architecture, he historically came first, but Paulo Mendes da Rocha nowadays is much more worldwide famous, no? After the Pritzker Prize, and Vila Nova Artigas died in 85. So he found our architecture school in 49. He designed this building that was inaugurated in 69, that we had a very hard coincidence that in the year that the building was open, he was expelled for the universe for political reasons. Well, the light comes from the ceiling. The whole ceiling of this building is providing light to the space. It could be very easily described. That is that place where we saw in the picture. here is a floor that belongs to the student. This width is 66 meters wide, 110 meters long. So the student own a place here that is 20 meters wide and 110 meters long. Here is our library, the departments, studios, and classrooms. And this guy, Villanova Artigas, he liked to say to the student that we should think about the building as a city, and that we have to take a city as a building. And I like pretty much these two pictures that I found to illustrate this quote by him. And one more time, this place is, of course, Anhangabaú, the former Anhangabaú, but it is a thing that it's not to describe at this time. So, again, this is one of our rivers. The historical one that I mentioned are two. Tamandatei is in here, Anhangabaú in this place, and the three of them that made Anhangabaú River here. Anhangabaú is very short. In my interpretation, it's not the name of the river, but much more the name of the place. And I told you that I like the word because Anhá in Guarani language means devil. Baú is place. But I don't believe that this name, so it's a kind of hidden place of the devil. That's the very dramatic name of this place. But I don't believe that the name comes from any bad feeling about, but just to express how dramatic was the geography in this place in a very soft landscape. And the city was found here. In the beginning, it was found in 1554. So the rivers that are placed 20 meters below to this level, it is a plateau. Actually, the whole thing is one single plateau here that was cut in two by the Anhangabaú River. So this is completely flat, exactly a plateau, and the river is 20 meters below with a very steep bank. So we can walk here in the ring of plateau, and the river is there 20 meters below, and the Anhangabaú, it's a void 20 meters deep and 150 meters wide, and about 1,500 meters long. So this is a space much more than a river. And this is the place where the city was found. And to me, when I start to see about this history, and I thought a little bit about the relationship between construction and geography. And what would be a way to describe this relationship in São Paulo is that for 300 years, the city remains completely constrained inside this historical settlement. And I call this time as the refugio, because for 300 years the city was not related to anything that happened off of its primordial plateau. But this is, it's true if we think about the city, but there is one thing that could be noted to talk by the last time about Indians tonight, but it's so interesting to me because this place were full of Indians much before the arrival of Portuguese. Not exactly this place, but the whole country, of course. And the settlement of the São Paulo nowadays, we had several Indian centers that it was a kind of polynuclear organization. And it's funny because our neighborhood came from those Indians places as well. So we had in some the same Indian names as a center of neighborhood, like Butantan, very nice names. And everything is linked. And so the city was completely closed here in this very small plateau, but there was a lot of a precedent structure that we also inherit from the Indians. But look here in the cross section. This is the small plateau that actually follow to this side. So this and this piece are exactly in the same level, but the Anhangabaú made a void here, like a precedent plateau that was cut by the river, and there we had the wall and the river going to the east, and the plateau don't come back here in this east side again. No, just to this side here. So it makes a lot of difference between these two walls that define the historical settlement. After 300 years constrained inside that historical plateau, the city starts to confront that situation in order to be expanded. But it took one whole century until we were able to finally overcome the barriers. It was very hard to go to the other side of this river that, one more time, is Anhangabaú in this picture. So after 100 years crossing the void of Anhangabaú in a very precarious way, finally we built our first bridge in São Paulo city that was inaugurated in 1881. No, 1891, sorry. That was made by the guy that made this picture. He was a French lithographer, not an architect, not a builder, but he was an entrepreneur of this bridge. And I think that this construction was very, very important to the city. Actually, he bought this in Belgium and brought from Belgium to Brazil and assembled this in this place and over this very old city that we had there, like this. Or this is a little bit later, but to me this picture, it's amazing because I saw it some time after to had thought about this, and one more time I found a perfect illustration, because I think that the bridge, that specific bridge, after 100 years confronting that very hard topography when the cities that decide to expand, the bridge has a very strong symbolic meaning for our city, that it marks the overcoming. Well, we spent 100 years dreaming about an impossible thing, that is walking through the void to reach the second plateau. And the bridge made this thing possible. And this is this group of theater, Strand Fruit, that came to São Paulo in the 90s, and they represent this play in Anhangabaú again, there in São Paulo city. And I think that they were doing what the bridge made possible, because here it much more our dream than what we could do. So, and this was the Anhangabaú, the cars crossing pretty much in the void, but the difference, very important difference between this picture and that one that we saw before, is that in here we had already built a park in the valley of the river. This park was designed by a French landscape designer called Bouvard, and the bridge that was made by Jules Martin, the name of that lithographer, was here. This bridge was inaugurated in São Paulo in the same year of the Eiffel Tower. They were built at the same time. It was the same work of Giulio Carlo Argan, for instance, called the engineer's architecture. No, but here it is the most crucial construction, in my opinion, to our city. So we had the primordial geography made by Anhangabaú, and the crucial construction that is represented by this bridge. In 1929, Le Corbusier came to South America by the first time and came to Brazil. He flew from Uruguay to São Paulo, and he saw exactly this landscape. He saw the park in the valley, and the bridge, and the cars flying over Anhangabaú. But he had also been at the Fiat Turin, designed by Matteo Trucco in Italy. So where he is in this picture, or this picture, is the same building in Italy. No, that had the lane on the top, on the roof of the building, built in 1915, this building. And to me, of course, that this is not to explain, it's so simple that I can't believe that it explains exactly the things. But I think that these two pieces, what he saw in São Paulo with that bridge and that park, and what he had seen built in Italy, could be combined to allow him imagine this project that he designed to São Paulo in 29. And the description is amazing, because he mentioned the park on the bottom in all the valleys in the city. They mentioned that the car should be flying over the buildings. The buildings are described not as a skyscraper, but as a ground scraper. And so it's, I think that is pretty related to what he had seen in São Paulo. And as you know, he designed after that another project to Rio that is very, it's a development of the same idea, and the most developed one of the same strategy was that one that he designed to the Obus plan. And this, to me, was, well, it's like to put the thing in a very schematic way. But there is a coincidence for us in São Paulo that is unbelievable. In the same year that Le Corbusier had been there and designed that plan, it's not exactly a project, it's a much more, I think that I take that sketch much more as a comment about São Paulo, that it's not developed as a project. And in the same year, we had an engineer there that made this project to our city. It's crazy, because you look the plans, you look the topography, you look, and it's completely artificial. He's trying to find a ring that we never had in our Brazilian city. He is trying to find a single center that actually we never had, because we inherit that former structure from the Indians' place. But this plan were really successful in São Paulo, in a way. This guy designed this in 29, the same year of Le Corbusier. He published it as a book in 1930. After that, he was mayor of São Paulo city for 2 times. I think that with a difference of time in between, almost 20 years. And he was an engineer, a professor at our engineering school in that time. But he had this model in his mind. He was a very good artist. I don't know how to say it. This drawing was made by himself, the best way to say so. He was an engineer, but he had a model of city very closed, and a model that had 100 years in that time. So he was trying to follow Paris as a model, but it's very hard to do that 100 years later, because it's like to condemn our future to the past of a city that had no meaning anymore. We have to look to this drawing and remember that it was designed at the same year of Le Corbusier. It's not just the drawings, but Le Corbusier and everything about modern architecture had already been launched, and well, there is a way to define the way that I see is that Prestes Maia, this guy, was an engineer that became a kind of, he had a aesthetic prejudice, and all his technical judgment was behind his aesthetical prejudice. So he could not judge technically so well, because he had the dream to have a city like this. So he was very successful in several terms, but I think that this city never happened, of course. It could not, but he built a lot of our city. So that bridge was designed by him to replace that old one that I've showed before. And they end up doing a competition that was won by a great architect, but that made this bridge that is much better than the previous one. But in the same way, they replaced the former bridge for any. There was no reason to do that. No, for traffic, for anything, because the old bridge had exactly the same width of the streets in this side and the other side. They replaced just due to the prejudice of Prestes Maia as a major in that time, that thought that the iron structure was something that was not according to the city in that time. And I think that the most significant building or construction as an infrastructure in São Paulo was demolished for any reason. But these are very representative, these both projects, because we had one that was very successful building the city, another that was very successful educating architects or modern architects, all the work by Le Corbusier. And about 40 years later, in 1974, that same guy that designed our architecture school was hired to remodel the Anhangabaú, that same place. And so the Anhangabaú is a very small thing in here. So this is the both historical river would be here. This is our metropolitan one. He linked these two metropolitan rivers, and so in order to be able to design the Anhangabaú Valley, that he was hired to design an extension of 500 meters, he designed uh, 13 kilometers of this whole axis. So this, I think, that is very remarkable. The scheme is very simple. To the pedestrian on the top and the cars in the bottom, but the analysis that I'm sure he was not thinking about Le Corbusier project. Of course, this is the kind of so elementary reasoning that we find in any place, like a corner, like a Cards de Cumanos, but this is what he did. This drawing, that is very important, I think, because it's a kind of synthesis of those completely opposite reasoning by Le Corbusier and Precious Maya. So if you come one more time to the city nowadays, how it was built, just because I showed you one bridge that now I think we have thousands, more or less in the same situation. I could show you one building that it is this one. This is a building that was built, designed by Oscar Niemeyer in the 50s in São Paulo downtown. But it's a 35-story building for housing. In this building, there are 5,000 people living in it. I think that is one of the most amazing buildings we have in São Paulo. Its scale is outstanding, but we will come back later. I think because I won't describe too much the building. I just would like to show you some images, because I think that the buildings in São Paulo are the generic one. It's not a special one, and I will mention it a little bit later. So just the thing that came to my mind, because this more historical introduction is much more related to a work that I made before a second research that I did. And I try to go a little bit deeper in how these images and this precedent and the experience to live in a city acts, more than these schematic ideas that I showed. So if we go back to the section of São Paulo, the first settlement here, the Anhangabaú, and the second one, when we walk to the city, it's very easy to realize that there are one city that happened here. In general, the formal city was built there. In general, the people that had the same condition to live here were expelled in a way down to the river, but the city grows in both situations now in everything. So everything was built. But we found some situation when this lower city goes inside the upper one, when the upper city goes over the lower one, and everything is pretty mixed. It's not so easy to see. And just a very short mention. Now I start to think about these caves, like this place in Tunisia, where they made this plaza in the desert to to be protect from the heating of the sun and the houses that are placed here. Or I was very impressed about the cisterns in Istanbul like this, or this place in Bahia, where we have this lower city and upper city linked by this lift, or this construction that it is the road that links São Paulo to the harbor in a city called Santos. It's pretty close, but the road goes over this forest. And this guy, one important architect in São Paulo, that designed this building in 37 to be built in Anhangabaú, where they were several times considering about to make a tunnel link the Anhangabaú Valley to the other valley. So this tunnel would cross under the plateau to one river to other one. It was not built, and I have to say that this is an amazing architect, as you're going to see, but I think that this building is not the best, let's say. Or this one that showed the tunnel is the same by him. But what is interesting, I think that this precedent in this case allow him to imagine this project. He got the second prize for Brazilian competition. And in this complex, he proposed for 25,000 people. It's a huge complex. These are kind of public elevator that has 1, 2, 3, 4 stops. This is a kind of street. And so this is a building, this is another one, this is another one, and the whole thing, 25,000 people living in here. So he put 20 buildings like this to propose the city of Brasilia like that. And so I think that this is amazing. I'm not saying that Brasilia should be like this. I don't think that this project is better than the Lúcio Costa one that I like pretty much. But I think that this project is amazing as an architect that allows himself to think in this way. And with that precedent that in a way was given also by his experience of the city. I think that the most closest thing of this is that building that I showed in his own production. Or this project that was designed by Paulo Mendes da Rocha. This is to say it's the middle of the trees. So if we think about the construction of the road in the forest, it could be this piece. And the bridge is built by adding between one column and this piece of slab and other a bridge that made this building by Paulo Mendes da Rocha. Like this, it starts here and goes completely horizontal in the forest that are here to make a building that has this plan. This is the bridge that was designed by Paulo Mendes da Rocha, and the buildings that are placed besides that bridge. What was remarkable to me is that once I saw he describing this project, and he said that it was exactly the same situation that we had on Anhangabaú with that bridge and the buildings that are close to it. So he described like that. And he used the same strategy to design mostly, I think that the most schematic one were 3 projects that he designed after that. It's completely different of that one, but the same scheme, the same spatial disposition, the same strategy. This is a different project, and I want to show the others one. Or the geography in São Paulo and how the situation is repeating different places. This is a completely different place in the city. This line is the ground level. We had that bridge that was exactly crossing a valley. This is a car bridge. It's an important avenue that is crossing the valley here, and this bridge will found the ground level in both sides. So it's flat. If you run here on the top, there is no slope. It's completely flat. It's just overcome a valley, exactly like there in Anhangabaú, but in a completely different place. So about 30 years after that bridge was built, they built a subway here. That was another bridge under the existing one, and I think this is a beautiful metro station that we have there in São Paulo. Or this project that was designed by this team of students in our architecture school. Everything that you have underground here in Montreal makes this thing seems very easy and possible, and but to me it's very nice how students are in the front of our activity, exploring new possibilities. And this, I think that we could infer this possibility to São Paulo City in several ways, but to be able to put it so clear, like here, now we could add the president of Montreal. It would be very helpful. They proposed this. It was a successful project because it was prized in a Biennale of Architecture, but it was not to be built. So, and I think about some inversion that we can find in the city. In general, when we walk through downtown, that's the situation. The street is a kind of canyon and the buildings there. To me, it's very interesting because the ground level could be here, but could be there, and there is no difference as a space to the, or that situation is completely inverted when we cross the bridge over the Anhangabaú, that everything is open like this. Or an inversion that I found very, very curious. This, one more time, is São Paulo, as you know, and in a social approach, taken both city in a cross-section, I could say that São Paulo is Rio de Janeiro upside down. Because all those people that were expelled down to the river in São Paulo were expelled up to the hill in Rio. This is true. Those areas that are not good enough to be, not easy, that are dangerous, that is there's always a disaster that can happen. It's a very hard situation. These are our surfers. But I'm a little bit worried about the time. This is the most dangerous sport in the world. I like very much this picture, but I think that it's not to promote this sport that is completely unacceptable. These guys are over trained, running the outskirts of the city. These trains are electrical ones, a lot of cable, high voltage. They have to bend their body to not touch one of those live wires. One touch it's done. So it's really, really hard. But what to me was remarkable when I saw this picture, of course, those people that were expelled down to the river, up to the hill, and all those people there, the most shame thing in Brazil, is the social inequality. They are always oppressed by everything, by a train, by all the structure that we have in the city, all the infrastructure. In this picture, what I found is that these guys were able to invert the relationship. All those things that it would be loading their shoulder, they had to put upside down, and they were over the train running 60 kilometers an hour. And this is in a cultural description that I would like to say. It's very important, I think, for an architect maybe, because they can leave everything behind. I know the tradition, there is no tradition, anything on their shoulders anymore. And so they can imagine different things. It's not happen too much. So, and some stuff that I think that could be too much, I will try to be brief, but this is a kind of absurd sentence to say violence as norm, because violence is exactly the opposite. It's exactly the lack of norm, the lack of rules, the lack of law. But sometimes we feel that the rule is exactly the lack of rule. And I start this second part of this research about São Paulo in a very bad mood, find the numbers, how many people are killed every year, how much I could consider that also died due to kind of urban violence, and the numbers are crazy. So in that time, we had 5,000 people and every year that was killed in the city, 20 million people city. But if I consider also the traffic, how much people die every year in the traffic, how much people that in a way a different kind of feel of urban violence, the number is crazy. And this situation, I think, that brought through very hard crisis for an architect, because how we could act as an architect building a city when the whole city has no meaning anymore. This is a first one. And the second one, when we think about the schools of architecture, is the question is how we can work to develop the images that we can put in movement to design a project when the violence doesn't allow us any space for any image anymore. But of course that I thought about, and at the same time I didn't believe that we had no way. And so I did everything trying to find some way to overcome this situation as well. So this is a sketch that I made based in a presentation of Paulo Mendes da Rocha in an art exhibition in São Paulo that describe our city in a very interesting way. 50 kilometers of train, of subway, 250 of trains, 2,500 kilometers of lifts. I think this is very nice. I could give this three information and say 20 million people, which city you can design. So it's very interesting. And if I put an apartment, it's not a building, I put just one apartment here to say how absurd is to imagine a single apartment in 22nd floor with no building behind, below or above. So it's completely, and we bought this piece of thing and we trust that it is possible. It cost a lot of money. And but that's why I think that the building in São Paulo should not be described as a special one, but as the mainstream, that one that has no quality in itself. So this is, I will mention just because I like very much. I mean, this is the word house. And this is a Sumerian hieroglyph that gave the letter B in our alphabet, because the word house in the Semitic language was the word Beth, that became beta and B. But the drawing of the house is amazing, you know, the final space inside and outside, the line that in the door, how you go. And when we think about the amount of project, of course, Le Corbusier Museum in architecture, but I was talking about that we have, all of us, this two dimension of our being. One that has the necessity of a kind of privacy, and another that just exists in contact too. And to find a good balance between these two things is what the city, one of the important proposals of the city. But when we look to this picture of São Paulo, I think that you can realize what I mean about not have any specific building, but just this, all of them. And if I think about the question is, I thought that I couldn't find any answer looking from far. I mean, from this distance, that we had to go closer to the city, and that was we did together with Peter and a group of students in São Paulo, from one river through this path, and we cross the other one. And so I will show you very quickly. The path starts in the central market. That is a kind of city inverted as well, because the blocks are inside the building and the street are, this is the outside of this market, and again we pass inside the different one. And so if you look there, you can see the upper city crossing over the lower one. Or this picture that you can't say where is inside, where is outside, where is the street, or is the sidewalk. So there is more vendors here outside than inside the store. And this, again, no, there is no space to cars, and everyone never place. And this very steep street, I think that it shows the most precarious way to link the upper to the lower city. Or there we see, or I think that you can't see, but this very dark part of the picture is a tunnel that crosses under the upper city, or one more time a bridge. And the upper city, that's completely different. The picture were made in the same day. So here we are looking to the lower one, the upper one. So, and here is project by Paulo Mendes da Rocha. It marks the beginning of that former bridge that was replaced in 38, but it starts here. There we can see the bridge. This is the bridge. We are crossing Anhangabaú, that in my opinion was completely destroyed, because to me the strongest thing about this space was the both scale that it had at same, at ONS. No, the local and the metropolitan one. If I think about this both, they came since the Indian Trail. We had this metropolitan, or this huge scale of 1,000 kilometer walking, and the space very well defined with the name since before, much before the city. And this project, I think that was bad. Or in the same way you have the underground here, we have in this part of the city a lot of galleries. No, there is no problem about the cold, but the rain is very often really wet. So, and this path, I think, allowed us imagine some operation to comment the city, or to understand the city in a different way. And that was what I tried to show in this sketch. Now, one is this is the former plateau, to develop some different possibilities of transfer from the lower to the upper, and to invade when or to infiltrate when the lower city comes under the upper one, and to invade when the upper city invade the lower one. To some operations that I think that is pretty clear if we look São Paulo city in a very careful way. I mean, but it's not an invention. It's not something that we have to build. It's there. It's just to start to explore a little bit, like those students made that tunnel. Like it's something to be. I mean, it's like to be able to enjoy what we have. I think that's much more like this. But what I would like to mention to finish, of course, that everything that I told you was to try to understand how the city acts in our way to think, or in my way to think about architecture. And I was trying to realize all the ways that it acts. And these that I called here in the end, invasion, infiltration, in the beginning I was calling the cave and the aerial city. And I went once to Buenos Aires to show some projects, very small projects like this one. And I described this house that had a previous slope, like here from the street to the back of the site. And the former owner, they destroyed completely the natural topography to make it flat, believing that it would be more expensive to be sold. It's crazy. I went to see, and I left the site very upset about. The neighbor in the back was in a dangerous situation. And I start to consider about this amount of earth that I wouldn't like to have. Otherwise, I wouldn't like to export or import earth anymore. So what we did, we built 3 boxes that we filled with that exactly amount of work, and we built these 3 different gardens in 3 different levels, and the house is floating here, and so it's very simple. But what to me was surprising, that there was a critic seeing the presentation, and after that he came to talk with me. His name is Fernando Diez. He's a very clever, good critic in Argentina. He managed a very important magazine called Suma in Argentina. And he told me that the most impressive thing about the work that I showed, that all the house that I showed, it has, he could describe as half cave and half spaceship, was the word that he, and I was for years thinking about how city acts in our way to think about architecture. I had already described as cave and aerial, and I did this house and some others that I think that he was right, and I had never realized. So it's not so easy to know about the process that we have to design. But I think that's very helpful to think about and to try to recognize how the ideas comes and how the image acts during the imagination process. No, this is 3 pictures of this house. Doesn't matter. And that's the last one. And thank you very much.